This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And you know what, Shane? I was wrong and you were right. Arizona remains undefeated and a unanimous number one. Likely for another week. We'll see what happens on Saturday in Tempe. But you called Wildcats by 3 in Provo.
Yeah.
Nailed it dead on. Good for you.
Yeah, well, hey, butt-clenching season has come early this year. Usually it's reserved for March. I wasn't happy about the winning by 3. By the time I was actually thinking with a few minutes left, wow, we both undersold Arizona's chances. But, they got to 3. A little crazy how it happened, but all's well that ends well. And 21-0, and the only thing standing in between a new school record is the Bobby Hurley and the Sun Devils on Saturday. But, we're learning to enjoy the ride, and it's going to get even bumpier as we go along. And for purposes of preparing for the NCAA tournament, I think that is a very, very good thing.
Great get. Again, on this week's show for the third time, Fran Fraschilla is going to join us. You heard him on the call on Monday night against BYU. Just love his enthusiasm, and I'll tell him that on the interview, that he is just so passionate when calling these games. You got to appreciate that. I know that Arizona fans, because we follow it, are, on social media, are critical of game announcers. We saw that, and Casey Jacobson admitted that on last week's show. But I have not heard anybody say anything negative about Fran. He is that good, Shane.
Well, I think Casey's great too, but I think people jumped onto our YouTube page last week without even watching the interview, but that's neither here nor there. Appreciate you coming to visit the page regardless. But yeah, no, Fran's fantastic. There's so many other things he could be doing with his time. He's very, national, well-renowned.
Best of the best.
One of the best. And he's just chooses to spend 20, 30 minutes of his time every few weeks with us. And we're very thankful for it. He is one of a kind.
Let's get to it. Lot to go over. Football, basketball, Shane's standouts, all of it in this segment. So here we go. Let's start with basketball. Arizona 21-0, Shane, and they learned a lot about themselves in the final minutes at BYU. I would guess this is an easy buy, but once again, buy or sell.
Yeah, I'll buy that. You look, you can argue, and I might argue, that this was the best case scenario for Arizona, even though it caused us all an unnecessary amount of stress on a Monday night. They get out of Provo with a big win to help further bolster their case for a 1 seed. And they're forced to look in the mirror and realize they have to correct some things. I think we saw a bit of a foreshadowing of this after some late game struggles it's the first game of the year against Florida and UCF to a certain extent. And yeah, we'll get to the officiating in a minute. But yeah, Arizona's struggled to put some of these games to bed. It's not the first. It's the most dramatic example, certainly, but it's not the first time. And if you believe Charles Barkley's contention that you learn as much from almost losing as you do by actually losing, then I think this will turn into a good opportunity to correct some late game decision making without Tommy Lloyd having to convince them that it's something they have to work on, right? Because they saw it with their own eyes, they experienced it. Now, I do think if Arizona had lost this game, it could have shaken their confidence a bit. Not just to lose your first game, but to do it in that fashion. Oof. It's something that could have legitimately derailed the season. I'm not saying it would have, but a lot of young guys on the team, things could have gone the other direction quickly. So I think Braden Berry's block at the end of that game, and he had a great offensive game before he did that. It was massive, not just in preserving a big win, but in possibly avoiding a confidence-shattering moment for a team that I think at this point is unarguably the best in the country, not just in resume and ranking, but in talent and that eye test that you like to talk about.
So I felt like I was watching. I hate to use this analogy.
I know you're going.
2005 Illinois. Yep. I felt like I was watching the end of that game against BYU, and a lot of Arizona teams lose the game the way that things started to spiral at the end there. I really I mean, you can imagine how I'm sitting there fairly pessimistic. I was by myself watching the game, and it's probably a good thing that I was.
Me
Um,
too.
it was hard to
It
watch.
was
Now,
surreal. That last minute was
it
just
it
surreal
was
watching that unfold. Yeah.
it was, and you know, I saw a clip. It was like the anniversary the other day of that Duke comeback against Maryland in 2001, where they were down like 11 points in the final minute. And I'm like, here we go. It was just one of those things that, you
Hmm.
know, I had a BYU friend at the game who lives up in near Provo, and he's texting me and a few others on a group chat. And I'm going, God, this is because I'm running my mouth the whole game. Yeah, you're
Yep.
watching us kick your ass, and
Yeah.
it was unfortunate. With that said, you learn a lot about that surviving a win like that,
Yeah.
and I thought, you know, I was glad to be wrong. I thought BYU would win. I thought BYU would win by double digits, and Arizona dominated that basketball game. Now, we'll talk about it more with Fran later in the show, but that was as good of a win for Arizona, in my opinion, to hold on despite the adversity, Shane, as Arizona's had almost all year. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, at UConn and that one are the two to me that really, because those are, you're talking about two top 10, 15 teams. You know, UConn obviously number two right now, but
Yeah.
both of them very, very impressive on the road in true road environments.
And I did mention last week that one of my several minor concerns, because they are minor, with this team was making free throws late in games. That
Oh,
wasn't as big an issue. They did miss
mm,
some. Overall, they shot very well from the field, but yeah, Koa Pete missed a couple late again. Braden Burris went, I think, 13 of 14 from the line. He did miss one late. He made the last two, but it wasn't so much that as it was just the turnovers at the end of the. They had, excuse me, they had done a remarkable job taking care of the ball against West Virginia and Cincinnati. I think they turned it over a combined 11 times. And I think they had just 4 or 5 turnovers in the first half against BYU. And then the last minute happens. We'll get to the officiating here shortly, but yeah, there were some gaffes there. I think that the home crowd in Provo had something to do with that. BYU is actually the best team in the second half in terms of scoring margin in the country. Arizona's not far behind, but BYU is up there. So they never give up. They know how to make a run. But maybe this kind of game had to happen for Arizona at some point, and I
mhm.
still think they're going to take a loss or two at some point as well. But I think being able to survive this kind of game and then realize you have things to work on. Not Tommy Lloyd just saying it lip service, but actually them knowing, yeah, we got to make sure we secure these games and play a full 40. I think that's going to be very valuable going forward.
Shane, buy or sell. Arizona has a Tony Padilla problem.
Well, I gotta buy it. I don't. It's funny because I mean, no, do I think Tony Padilla has it out for Arizona? No. Do I think he's a great ref? No, at least not late in games. And we saw what happened against BYU last year. It's funny because like BYU fans are basically saying, look, Tony Padilla is out to screw us in every game except when we play Arizona because apparently Arizona is the only team that he hates more. But um, it reminds me a little bit of Scott Foster with Chris Paul, all those
Yeah, right,
games where.
right.
So
Yeah,
I again,
yeah.
I don't know if there's something to it, but I mean, it, it's like you didn't have to guess who made that call. The offensive foul against Jaden Bradley, which some of those
Horrible
calls were
call.
okay, but that was ridiculous. There was that call, and then there was one also in the final minute. There were a bunch of calls in the final minute, to be fair, but one where I think Awaka got fouled out on where there was no foul. It was in the paint. It ended up being a 5 point play for BYU because he get the basket, missed the free throw, kick it out, hit a three, and that's 5 points. There was no foul on that at all. It's just I think the lack of consistency is the problem. There were some plays earlier where Arizona probably should have been called for a foul and they weren't. But yeah, that call at the end of the game, the jump ball, maybe, I think Bradley might have gotten fouled earlier on that possession, but that
Yeah.
offensive foul call was just there is no excuse for that call. I don't care when in the game it happens. That's just a bad call.
Yeah, Padilla, they gotta stop assigning him Arizona games. It's just not right now until things calm down. It's just not good.
Yeah,
Uh, I mean, especially you're gonna put him at Arizona BYU after what happened last year, the game
yeah,
you were at. I mean, that is negligent at
yeah.
best by the Big 12. I'm very disappointed in that.
I will say this though, Tommy Lloyd I thought hit the right note after last year's loss to BYU, the way it happened, and I think he hit the right note after this game. Basically, both times said, "Yeah, I think there were some questionable calls." Like last year, he said, "I thought it was a bad call at the end." but we can't put ourselves in that position. And he kind of struck the same note in this game. It's like, yeah, those. He didn't call out the officials directly, but he basically said, yeah, some of those calls didn't go our way, but we got to essentially control what we can control and take better care of the ball late in the game. I think he was right about that. It's fair to say, look, I think we got treated a little unfairly, but we also have to take care of our own business. And it's like I said, an opportunity for him to continue to preach that to the team.
Jaden Bradley and Braden Burries were so good all game, and then
Mm.
Jaden Bradley gets mugged at the end of
Yeah.
the game, and there's no. I mean, that or they
Yep.
call an offensive foul. It was
Yeah.
just that's one of the worst calls. I probably the worst call I've seen to go against Arizona this year.
Yeah, if you want to say, I don't think he had it out for anyone, but if Tony Padilla had it out for anyone in that last minute, it was Jaden Bradley because he got shoved and there was no call. He gets called for the offensive foul, the jump ball in the last few seconds. I mean, it was just like if anyone had a right to kind of go off on an official, it would have been Jaden Bradley. I'm glad he didn't in that situation, but he absolutely could have.
All right, play a little buy or sell with this one. I'm gonna take the 10 teams right now that are in the top 10. Arizona, Yukon, Michigan, Duke, Nebraska, Gonzaga, Michigan State, Iowa State, Illinois, and Houston. That the final four will be made up of four of those 10 teams. Are you buying or selling that?
I would lean toward buying. I would say more likely than not, though. I think the three top contenders outside of the top 10 at the moment, and I know I'm biased here as well, but I actually do believe all three of those are in the Big 12, Texas Tech, BYU, and Kansas.
Okay.
I don't know if any of those teams are capable of winning the whole thing, but I think all of them are capable of winning four games in the tournament. But yeah, I
I don't know about
think that,
Kansas. I don't know the Kansas.
well, with a healthy Darren Peterson, I think maybe. I think they're figuring it out. They're clicking
Okay.
at the right time. That game at KU is going to be very difficult coming up. But yeah, I think the best teams in the country right now are Arizona, Duke, Houston. I'm being stubborn. I still think Houston's one of the best. I think Illinois is one of the best right now, and Iowa State probably, and then maybe Michigan and Nebraska. Even though I wasn't impressed with either team the other day, especially in the second half. Maybe Gonzaga as well. Maybe those would be my list of championship contenders. Although the list of possible Final Four teams is always a lot bigger than that.
I think right now, if we were to do it, Arizona, Yukon, Michigan, and Houston are my final four, and Houston's 10th.
Yeah,
So
maybe UConn as well. UConn's been struggling against some Big East teams that aren't
they're
very
still
good though.
19-1. They're only
They
lost to
they are
Arizona.
they
Yeah.
are. I
And
just
Michigan should have lost to Nebraska
They should have.
on
They were
Tuesday night.
behind almost the whole game. That was an
Yeah.
ugly second half, and if Nebraska
Yeah.
was healthy, they probably would have won. I don't know why Michigan was favored by as much as they were.
So John Rothstein put out last week a starting lineup of Arizona players all time and did not include Sean Elliott.
Yeah.
I'm going to rely on you for your all-time starting lineup, and I want to see if I disagree with anybody.
Okay, and this is not easy. I mean, well, a couple of them are. I'll put it this way: one of them is easy, and it's the one John Rothstein missed. But I'll go position by position like he did.
Okay.
Point guard. It's either Mike Bibby or Damon Stoudemire for me. I think Bibby gets the nod for the championship, but Stoudemire is a close second for his 4 years at Arizona, including a Final Four in '94. Jason Gardner and TJ McConnell, I think, also get some consideration there. Shooting guard, I'm going to give a slight nod to Salim Stoudemire over Gilbert Arenas.
Yeah, that's who I was going to hope you included, Shane. Yep.
Yeah, and primarily because Salim was at Arizona for 4 years, shot a career 45.8% from three, including 50.4% in the senior year. Ridiculous. And he was a second team All American that year. So I think Salim belongs up there. Small forward, Sean Elliott, best player in the history of the program. Enough said. Power forward, this may be an unpopular pick, but I'm going to say Derek Williams. He was only at Arizona for 2 years, but you can argue that his sophomore year was the single best in Arizona history, and he
I agree.
helped
Yep.
and he helped make Arizona make a very improbable run to the Elite Eight. Came just short of the Final Four. Arizona probably wouldn't even have made the tournament without him. And then at center. For me, it came down to Big Bird, Bob Elliott, and Channing Frye, and I went with Bob Elliott. He's the second leading scorer in Arizona history behind Sean Elliott. Averaged 18.7 points, 9.5 rebounds per game in his career. So I know we're going way back there. Game's different now, but I'm going to throw him in there. I give him the slight edge over Channing Frye, who is one of my all-time favorite Wildcats.
So I want to throw this out there, and I'm not saying, just go with this one. I looked at All Americans here
Mm,
and all-time All-Americans. DeAndre Ayton played one season at Arizona. He was an All-American. Azuolas Tubelis, you could maybe consider him a center if you want. He was an All-American. I mean,
yeah.
that's how I looked at it. I agree with you. I would go Bibby, Salim Stoudemire, Sean Elliott, Derek Williams, and I mean I'd probably go small ball here. Um, and probably go like three guards and throw in like a Damon Stoudemire or a Ben Mather in there. This last one was hard. There just wasn't a center that, Lauren
Yeah.
Woods because he got him to the finals. I mean,
Yeah, that's the thing. You can use all kinds of different criteria as far as, did they go deep in the NCAA tournament? Did they play all 4 years? Did they do great as a pro? And so there's all kinds of different criteria, but I just thought of the guys who made the biggest impact on the program, not just in a single season, but in a career. So all different kinds of ways you can go with it. Certainly you can put Miles Simon on the list as well, for that
yeah.
reason.
Hmm.
So don't want to discount him, but yeah, it's not easy. I looked
Not
at his
easy.
list and I thought, well, outside of Sean Elliott, which should obviously have been there, it's like there's a lot of debate after him, and so, but I thought it'd be fun to talk about. That's what I came up with.
My favorite thing to talk about this week, just because I'm a football guy,
Yep.
is let's break down the football schedule, and we'll do that more in future weeks, Shane. But looking at the schedule, just give me your first observation. Anything that stood out to you when looking at the schedule?
Well, I mean, the obvious thing is having BYU as early as they
Yeah.
as they do, but looking at the schedule, so much is going to change between now and September, but Arizona can and probably should, you could argue, start the season 4-1. I think as of now, I'm going to predict they'll lose at BYU, but
Yeah.
they'll beat NAU, they'll beat Northern Illinois, which went 3-9 last season. They again should win at Washington State,
Hmm.
which has yet another new head coach. And that's a game I'm going to try to go to. We have family out in Spokane, and Pullman's about a 90-minute drive from there, so I'd love to try to get to that one. And then the home game against Cincinnati, as of now, as of this writing, as they say, is one they should probably win too. After that, it gets a lot tougher. At West Virginia, I think Rich Rod's team is going to be a lot tougher in year two.
Hmm.
At home against Iowa State, even though they have a new head coach as
They're
well.
going to be bad.
Yeah,
That's
maybe.
not going to be a good team
Yeah.
rebuilding. Yep.
At Texas Tech, at home against TCU and Utah, at Kansas State, and at home against ASU. There aren't any layups there by any stretch. I said before the schedule was released that based on the opponents and the pieces they're losing from 2025, which are significant both in terms of talent and leadership, 7 wins I think is a realistic goal, and I stand by that. I
Yep.
think if you can get to a 4-1 start and then go 3-4 the rest of the way, and hopefully, of course, that includes a win over ASU, I'd probably take it. Although it's worth noting that Arizona plays, by my count, 4 teams with a first-year head coach: Washington State, Kansas State, Iowa State, and Utah. So maybe there are more than 7 wins in there, but you never know.
The first thing that stood out to me, Shane, there are no back-to-back road games like we saw this year.
Mm,
It goes, home game, road game, 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 home game. I mean, really, three of the last four of that tough stretch, or I mean, the last five at Texas Tech, home TCU, home Utah, at Kansas State, home ASU. Three of the last five are at home. We're gonna
mm.
all, Texas Tech's probably gonna, beat Arizona pretty good on Halloween. But outside of that, I mean, you've got two new coaches there in Utah and at Kansas State. You don't know how those teams are going to be. I mean, I think Arizona is favored if they are as good as we think they are in at least 8 games next year.
Maybe.
I'd say I'd put the line at 7.5. I mean, you never know if the team comes out flat and they're not very good, just like in 2024, you never know. But as of right now, I think if we were to look ahead at all the games, Arizona would be favored in at least 8 games. And the Wildcats should be right on the fringe of the top 25 in the preseason rankings, similar to where they were in 2024, but more continuity with the staff. You have the coordinators coming back, you have a senior
Yep.
quarterback. This should be a fun season. And I really think that the schedule makers did Arizona a big favor with the way that this is laid out.
Yeah,
I
for
was
the most
very
part,
pleased with
I
that.
think
Yeah.
so. And I think Getting your starting quarterback back, I think, is half the battle right there. And then after that, I think the most important position is offensive line. And they looked like they're in decent shape there with their transfer portal additions, and then getting Tristan Bounds back, I think, is massive. So that's a good foundation right there, along with keeping the coordinators for continuity is massive. But there's always turnover there. They did lose Alonzo Carter to head coaching job at Sacramento State, and then guys could Crowley as well. But overall, getting Seth, as of now, getting Seth Daggy back for another year is huge. Getting Danny Gonzalez back for another year is huge. Of course, Brent Brennan as well, who I think we all have a lot more faith in now.
Yeah.
And all the other positions as well. So I think in terms of continuity, it's about best case scenario, certainly a lot better than a lot of other teams in the Big 12 and other power schools. And the schedule is going to be tougher. They're going to have to replace a lot of guys, but
on defense, especially.
Yeah, especially on defense. We got a glimpse of that against SMU. But I certainly optimistic. I think, at minimum, a bowl game should be the expectation next year going, and hopefully every year going forward with Brent Brennan.
I think back on that SMU game is that, we started the month with that on January 2nd. And I mean, you and I were there and it was a disaster of a first half, but the fact the defense was able to make adjustments, and Danny Gonzalez did such a good job with his second half defenses this year, that I think Arizona, the whole goal next year is stay in the game in the first half, because Danny Gonzalez knows how to make those adjustments, at least from what we saw this year.
Didn't allow a single point in the second half in their last 3 games. That's remarkable.
Crazy. That's a crazy stat, Shane.
Yeah.
That's a wild stat. Give us some Shane standouts, some interesting. What do you have for us? I know ASU and Arizona played women's basketball tonight as we're recording on Wednesday. Wildcats were ahead in the third quarter, but lost 68-61, but still a good effort from Becky Burke's team.
Yeah. Molly Miller was a good head coaching. I think Molly Miller was a great head coaching hire at ASU, and I feel bad for GCU losing her. And then Becky was great at Arizona as well. But yeah, the ASU's off to a good start under Molly Miller. Hopefully the men's result will be a little different. Talk a little men's golf. Filip Jakubczyk, he won the individual NIT championship in Tucson by shooting a pair of 67 rounds and a 68. Awesome. Overall, Arizona finished second out of all 13 teams that participated in that tournament. They finished second right behind Texas, so a very good showing for them. Gymnastics, sophomore Aubrey Kronfeld was named the Big 12 Specialist of the Week. She went to Red Mountain High School, not far from where I live in Mesa. She had a career best 9.9 score on bars in Arizona's win over Towson last weekend. And also junior Abigail Martin had a career high score of 9.95 on floor and 39.45 in the all-around to help Arizona win that meet. And then last thing, you sent this to me, hat tip to Justin Spears, who noted that a pair of Patriots coaches are former Arizona coaches. Running backs coach Tony Dews was U of A's receivers coach under Rich Rodriguez, and special teams coordinator Jeremy Springer had the same role under he who shall not be named at Arizona. Not quite like when you had the Patriots and Eagles in the Super Bowl a few years back, and you had Nick Foles and Rob Gronkowski and Marquise Flowers, but still some notable names in there. So very cool. I hope both teams lose in the Super Bowl, but I'm glad that at least one of them will go down. So with that said, Eric, this podcast, we're very thankful to be sponsored by Harrah's Auction Casino. Did you know, Eric, that Harrah's Auction Casino is your key to nationwide fun? Unlock perks at more than 50 destinations from coast to coast at your local home for Caesars Rewards, free dining in Atlantic City, Las Vegas, or New Orleans, free slot play in Maricopa, free hotel stays from coast to coast. Oh yeah, get rewarded for all the ways you play at the official sponsor of play, Harrah's Auction Casino. And I think you knew this, Eric. Caesars Rewards is the nation's #1 players card, and Harrah's Auction is the only local casino that has it. And Eric, we should have Harrah's GM and Arizona and Kansas alum Mike Kittner on to make some picks before the game in Lawrence coming up.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Kittner and see if we can make something happen next week. Nonetheless, great job on the Harrah's promo read. And now, coming up, our guy Fran Fraschilla joins us here on Wildcat Country. Shane, I believe it's the third time on this show that we've had one of our favorite guests. He is the best in the business. You can find him on Monday nights and other nights on ESPN. It is the great Fran Fraschilla. And Coach, first of all, glad to have you back once again. It's always an honor. Secondly, I had at least 5 people this week send me your tweet of your game prep that you posted on X on Tuesday morning. I got it yesterday and today. People saying, that is so impressive. Can you just tell us what goes into that?
Well, I've always been maniacal about preparation as a coach and now as a broadcaster. And I jokingly say, Eric, that ESPN's never going to fire me for being a butthole or for being unprepared. And so I treat every game like it's the Super Bowl. I really do. I love what I do. I try to bring a joy to the game. And certain games I'm more dialed in than others. And this game's Monday night, in part because I got to Provo Saturday, and I'll tell you guys about that. But I've been preparing for this Arizona BYU game for like 2 weeks. And so I was really dialed in. And about once a year, I share my notes. I just want young broadcasters to see what it looks like. Now, I print a lot of things out, as you could tell. A lot of my colleagues do it on computer. I went to Catholic school where the nuns taught me penmanship. Even though there were some people on Twitter criticizing the penmanship, I can read it. That's the most important
All
thing.
that matters.
Yeah, but I just wanted to share with people like how much work goes into a broadcast, and especially for young up and coming broadcasters, kids that are in J school at Arizona or BYU or other places. So that's why I did it, and it's fun. And I'll be honest, I thought that was a good one because the fan base at Arizona, I think, was skeptical of me 2 years ago because we lost a great Bill Walton. But I have so much appreciation for the history of the game and the history of Arizona basketball. Coach Olson was always nice to me. I know a lot of guys that are former players. And so I thought, you know what, this is a good week to put that out there. And so Wildcat fans got a chance to see it.
Fran, you are now, I believe, the second person on this podcast to use the word butthole. Eric, do you remember who the first one was?
I want to say Adia Barnes.
It was Adia Barnes, former women's basketball coach at U of A. You just said, so,
wow, okay.
You're in good company. All right, you got to call a great game the other night, Fran. Better than we would have liked. But it's a great game if you're impartial. But for us, it was that last minute was tough. But maybe I'm just trying to convince myself of something that isn't true here. But I thought the result on Monday night might be best case scenario for Arizona because they got the win. And they left Provo realizing they still have some things to work on. It sort of reminded me of Charles Barkley saying that, you learn as much by almost losing as you do by actually taking a loss. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. They dominated that game for 36 minutes. They really did. They were outstanding. So many great performances. Obviously Jaden Bradley is one of my favorites. You guys can tell that. Karchenkov, the big guys, Braden Burries. We did the Braden Burries game against Alabama when he broke out in Birmingham. And I think before that, he was averaging like 7 points a game, at least in his first 5. I know that was the case. See, I remember that from writing it down. But, and then they kind of like put it on cruise. Now, some missed free throws, I think. A couple questionable calls, which I called out.
Yeah,
the offensive foul on Jaden was just not a good call.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for those officials. They got a hard job, but so there were some things that caused that game to get really tight.
Yeah.
I mean, Kennard Davis hadn't made a shot since like Labor Day weekend, and he hits 5 in a row after missing his first 3. And but I can't disagree. They got the win. They dominated for much of that game. Tommy Lloyd can go back, watch the film with the team, and say, this last 3 minutes, we can't allow this to happen because this could cost us in the second or third round of the NCAA tournament, keep us from advancing as far as we think we can go.
You mentioned several guys who we love on the Arizona team. I want to mention Tobe Awaka because he didn't have a monster game against BYU, and part of that I think was because of foul trouble. But he's on pace to shatter a school record for total rebounding percentage in a single season.
Yeah.
Just to simplify it, he gets 1 out of every 4 possible rebounds when he's on the court. Is he the best 6 man in the country in your opinion?
I would have to say yes, just based on the fact that he's the sixth man on a number one team in the country who also was a starter last year.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's guys around the country that could make an argument, but I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that stands out like Tobe. What's really funny about Tobe and Krivas is I don't ever think it matters how many. Like, by the way, I don't know if you heard me throw the stat out. Going into the game, he was averaging one rebound every 2.1 minutes. And Dennis Rodman in his career averaged one for every 2.4 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And I think Will Chamberlain was one every 2 minutes. So Tobe, at least, in my mind, he's in the ballpark with some greats. But I think the amazing thing about this team right now is every single one of the eight guys that are in the rotation, they do some things either statistically or even when it's not statistically that just absolutely affect winning. Like Tobe and Krivas, man, he's growing on me too because you got a hard time scoring on Arizona inside because of those three guys. I said on the air, it's like having a great defensive line in football.
Yeah.
And so as good as Tobe is with the rebounding and the statistics and the Ken excuse me, the Ken Palm numbers, he and Pete and like I'll throw another kudo out there. Koa Pete did an unbelievable job on DeBonsa because I know some people got tired of me saying USA basketball, but it's almost like he had played against AJ so much in all those USA practices, by the way, over the last few years, that he almost knew how to guard AJ because AJ loves to get fouled.
Yeah.
And he's got a knack of throwing his body into you. And so I would just say, Shane, I could go down the list with those three guys particularly and talk about how important they are to Arizona winning night in and night out.
I want to ask you about two players. This is a two-part question for you, Fran. Karchenkov, you have been touting him since before the season when you came on with us, and
Yeah.
you have, I mean, this guy has lived up to all the hype and more. I want you to talk about, what you've seen from him and his growth during the season. And then on the other side, Anthony Del Orso is going through it right now. How
Yeah.
would you coach a guy like that to help him improve?
Well, okay, so let's go Karchenkov. And here's the thing you got to know about Karchenkov. When he was coming up in that Bayern Munich system, at the youth level, he was always the best player. Okay. Then last year, he plays with the professional team where he's playing with Shabazz Napier, won a national championship at UConn. Nick Weiler-Babb, who played at Iowa State, he's a great European player. And Ivan kind of struggled being a role player because he'd never been a role player. And so the thing that really impresses me is he's the ultimate role player on this team. Yes, he can get you buckets sometimes, but he's a great defender. He's great in transition. He just makes hustle plays that help your team win. So, like, he's even better than I thought he would be, honestly. Like,
Right.
I know it sounds crazy because I've said this on the air. I think he's one of the 10 best defensive players in the country right now, and he's only a
Wow.
freshman.
Wow.
Honestly. And he's not going to get the Defensive Player of the Year award right now because they're not going to give it to a freshman. But I thought he did a great job on AJ when he was matched up with him. Now, with Del Orso, I would say this from a distance, and I
Hmm.
haven't talked to anybody on the staff. It could be that maybe he could get frustrated because of what his role was last year as a starter. Okay. It's possible. I don't know that. But the other thing is, in a shooting slump, Tommy Lloyd's smart enough to say, hey, man, if you're open, keep shooting it because it'll come. And
Yeah.
it's not much different than Burry starting out the year very
Hmm.
slowly. And people were saying, what's wrong with him? Koa has the great first game. Karchenkov plays well. And then people are going, well, what's up with Burries? I thought he was the California Player of the Year. So with Anthony, I would just give it time. He's a 300 hitter, okay? Because that's what if you kind of translate that to his three-point shooting, 35 to 40%, right?
Yeah, he was over
And I
40
would
last
say
year.
that, yeah. And I think like, in baseball, if you have a fan like the Cubs, for example,
Hmm.
Cody Bellinger, when he was with the Cubs, he's a 300 hitter, but maybe he starts out the month of April and he's hitting 220.
Right.
You kind of know he's going to come around and end up hitting 300. And I think you got to hope that Anthony's like that. And I know Tommy and the staff will tell him, just keep playing your game. We're going to need you to make shots, and you will.
I'm hesitant to ask you this question, but I'll phrase it in a way that's good. So Arizona fans believe that Tony Padilla is out to get them. The BYU game last year, I believe. Did you call that game in Tucson with the
No,
fellow?
no, I remember. I remember.
But
I watched it. I
so
watched
I
it
was
on
there.
the,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
Shane was there. The Padilla hate among Wildcat fans is
Yeah.
unprecedented. How did you handle referees that you felt as a coach were not doing your team well repeatedly?
Well, I would say rarely did a guy in the old days. I'll give you guys an example. Okay.
Okay.
I was at Providence College with Rick Barnes, and we came to Tucson in like '91. We had a good team. We absolutely got screwed by Pac-12 officials. I'm just telling you. Little Richie Ballesteros, longtime Pac-12 official, he was not going to let us win that game. Okay, and that was true at a lot of places around the country, not just Arizona, but home cooking. Okay, and that was part of it. It just was. The officiating at the NCAA level right now is really good, especially when you get Big 12 officials. And I think for the most part, these guys don't care who wins. Um, Tony had a couple calls I disagree with you the other night, and I said it on the air. I'd have a hard time thinking he has it in for Arizona, but it's just like some Kansas fans think I don't like the Jayhawks. Okay. And Bill Self's one of my closest friends. There's a narrative that develops over time because of circumstance. You know, a close game, a rough call goes against you, and you think that the guy has it out for you. I would say 95% of the time, that's not the case, but it's human nature. Every now and then, there's a 5% where this guy might not like your head coach. He might have a bad experience with the fans, and he goes, "All right, you want to yell at me and call my mother a name? I'm going to have it in for you." But I would say 95% of the time, these guys don't care who wins, honestly.
I was going to save this question for toward the end, but since we're on the topic, since Arizona's going to ASU on
Yep.
Saturday, Bobby Hurley, who famously likes to get in officials' faces, what are
Yes.
your overall? Because ASU gave Arizona a very hard time a couple weeks ago, and now they got to go and play him in Tempe. There's always a lot of U of A fans there, but it will still be a home game for ASU.
Yeah.
How do
Yes.
you an early preview of how you think that game's going to go, and just your overall thoughts of what Bobby Hurley's done in Tempe?
Well, I like Bobby. I've known him since he was like 14 years old. I know his dad well. I know Danny well. I'm so sad to see him sometimes lose his cool because, as a former coach who was very intense, it's an out of body experience. You can't help yourself. A guy that does that all the time, like Danny or Bobby, and I did it a little bit. I was probably a 7 on a 10 scale. Those guys are right at a 10.
Hmm.
It's an out of body experience because especially a guy like they're not to say they were underdogs, but I always felt like I was the underdog. I didn't play college basketball. I didn't know if to get back to like what you mentioned about officiating. Were they out to get me? And it's an out of body experience. Now I will say this: you guys may not remember this, but when I did a random when DeAndre Ayton was a freshman, I did the game in Tempe. I'll never forget that.
Oh,
Bill
I was there for
Walton.
that one.
Yeah, Dave Pash needed a mental health break from Bill Walton, so I did the game with Dave.
Do you remember Michael Buffer did the pregame intros for that game? The
I
big
do remember
pregame?
that.
Yeah.
It was an amazing atmosphere.
Yeah,
It
it
was.
was.
And what I remember was Bobby acting up with the officials, and there was a Pac-12 game, and I said they'll never go for this in the Big 12, not knowing that Arizona State would ever end up in the Big 12,
Yeah.
and I just think Bobby is hurting his team. I think he hurts his team, and I think he's a great guy. I think he's a very good coach. It's different at Arizona State than it is Arizona's a blue blood.
Yeah.
Arizona State's always been trying to climb that wall in basketball, and but I think he hurts his team, and it's unfortunate because I do think he's a good coach, and if you get to know him off the court, you'd actually like him,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's a distraction, honestly, with the officiating.
Yeah, well, I used to work at the ABC affiliate in Phoenix, and I talked to him a bunch of times. I hosted a Facebook Live Q&A with him his second year. Always great with me, and he's, he like a lot of players do. He flips the switch as soon as the game starts. But away from the game,
Totally.
he's awesome guy.
Yeah, totally.
We had Casey Jacobson on last week, and he
Yeah,
was giving us some of our criteria for a national champion. He
right.
noted that recent history shows that teams that go into the tournament undefeated don't win the national championship. They get
Yeah,
far, but they don't win it
yeah.
all. And so it actually might be beneficial to lose a couple games on the way. Do you think it'd be good for Arizona to go into the tournament with a couple losses?
Yeah, I do. I do because it builds. I'm telling you, we saw with the 38-1 Kentucky team when they lost to Wisconsin in the semifinals. That was I think that was Karl Anthony Towns' team, I think. And yes, I absolutely think that there will be so much pressure on the Wildcats going into the tournament. Now, I would say the odds of them going into the tournament undefeated in this league are slim. Um, Slim. Now, it's possible because I love this team. I think they can win it all. But I do think that some coaches will say, no, no, it's never good to lose. I disagree. I call it the psychology of the schedule, okay? Like what happens is, and there's so many aspects to this. You lose a game, let's say you throw away the game the other night. Let's say something crazy happens. DeBonsa hits a three and you lose that 15-point lead and the world's caving in Tucson, okay? And then the Cats roll off six more in a row, and people will say, "Oh, we could have been 27-0 if we hadn't lost that game at BYU." And I say, "No, no, no, no. Psychology to schedule. You lose a game that's that much of a heartbreaker, and you redouble your efforts. So sometimes losing actually is good for you because there's a psychology involved. Win or lose with games where I'll give you another example. Like when Mark Turgeon was at A&M and they were in the Big 12, he bitched about the first six games of their season, four on the road. And to me, that was an excuse for his team to play poorly.
Hmm.
And I said on the air, I would have never done that. I would have told my team, fellas, they've given us a tough early schedule, but we end up with 4 out of 6 at home. And if we can go 3-3 in this schedule, we're kicking somebody's ass in late February. And so psychology to schedule. I do think a loss or two is healthy. It lets you regroup. It lets you take the pressure off. It allows you to see some more of your warts
Yeah.
going into the 6 game stretch, which is the NCAA tournament, which I believe, as I've said, the Wildcats have a chance to win 6 in a row.
Speaking of the NCAA tournament, if I gave you, my opinion is now that if I believe the Final Four will come from the current top 10 teams as per the rankings. If I gave you the rest of the field and I took the top 10, which side hits?
I think the top 10. I do. I do. I think just because I thought you were going to say, would you take the Big 12 or the rest of the field? Because that's another good argument.
That's another good argument, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but I know I would say the top 10. I think historically the national champion will come from, and I know they've done metrics on this, a team that's ranked in the top 10 in December, or a team that's in the top 15 on offense and defensive efficiency. So I think that's a similar kind of take, Eric, that I would probably take a team in the top 10 right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, and that's how I felt. I actually made a bet with a buddy the other day that said, "Hey, I'll take the top 10 right now. You can have anybody else. This is the year of the Cinderella is over in the
Yeah.
NIL era, in my opinion." All right, last
Well,
one for
yeah.
you. Yeah, go ahead. Last
Yeah,
one for
I agree. I agree with that. I think the NI and that's why you don't see Cinderella mid majors. I don't think you're going to see that as much anymore with the major upsets because a lot of those kids who are on those teams at Belmont and Western
hmm
Michigan or Kent State, those guys after a great season are off to the high majors and the NIL money.
Well, look at Drake last year. That Sturts went to Iowa with his coach. I mean, you're going to see
Yeah.
that more often. All right, last one for you, and I don't want to end on a down note, but I think Shane referenced it with his first question. If you were concerned about one thing for Arizona going forward, one aspect of their game, what would it be?
I don't have a lot of concerns. I think this is kind of a fake answer, but my concern would be like okay, here's my concern. Let's talk big picture NCAA tournament, win the whole thing, okay? In a 35 game schedule, this gets back to psychology of schedule again. I thought this all out. In a 35 game schedule, you have 5 games you play over your head, okay?
hmm
You play Norfolk State at home and you hit 19 threes and you say, God darn it, we beat these guys by 50. I would have rather saved the 19 threes for the Kansas game.
hmm
There's 5 games you just play unbelievable. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. There's 5 games where you play below what you're capable of, and it doesn't matter who the opponent is. And you want to have a great season, you want to win as many of those 5 as you can. And the other 25 is who you are. That's who your team is, okay? And so when we think of the other 25 with Arizona, it's a really, really good top 5 team. So my one concern is not having that off night
Mhm.
at the worst, most inopportune time, whether it's a big game at the end of the regular season, whether it's a game in the Big 12 tournament, or it's a game in a Sweet 16 where they go 3 for 22 from three, and somebody like, let's take a team like St. John's, okay, it's going to be like a 5 seed, knocks them off because that's the night that nobody can make a shot. That would be my main concern. I think right now, in my opinion, and I've seen a lot of the best teams, I think Arizona, forget being ranked number one, I think they have every single ingredient to win it all that you can have from a national championship. You just need a little luck. No
Yeah.
injuries, no off night when it's the worst possible time.
Yeah.
But you guys know that we can go down the list.
Mhm.
Great point guard, depth, precocious freshmen who are no longer freshmen, size inside, couple of lock. I mean, I would say they got 5 lockdown defenders: Bradley, Karchenkov, and then the 3 guys up front. So it's all
Yeah.
here. You just don't want to have the bad night.
Yeah, yeah, and the NCAA tournament format is, I would say, the most brutal in all of sports, at least in North America, because you have one bad half, and
That's right.
it could be over. I got two more for you, Fran.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised Eric didn't ask this question, but I'll ask you. Who are your final 4 teams at this moment, and who do you like to win it all at this moment?
Ooh, boy, that's a good question. I haven't really given it thought, but I would say safely, I could easily pick 2 out of 5 coming out of the Big 12.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if you want me to pick 2, I'll pick Arizona, okay, because I
Mhm.
know it's a Wildcat podcast, and
Well,
I'm a shameless.
don't pick Arizona just because it's a Wildcat
Well, you know how,
podcast.
but you know how I feel about them already.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so that's a safe pick. And then I think it easily could be Houston. It easily could
Mhm.
be
Agreed.
Texas Tech. Now, Texas Tech. I've been told today that they're getting the big kid back, the shot blocker from VCU. He's finally going to play again. He hasn't played since like November. 6'11" kid. And Mosley had 6 points. A Villanova transfer. He had like 6 points in 8 minutes the other day. First action of the season for them. So I like Texas Tech. I also like Iowa State. So I'd say two from there. I can't go against Michigan because they're kind of like Arizona. They got all the pieces. I don't think they have the point guard play in Elliot Cadeau that Arizona has in Jaden Bradley, but he's not chop liver either, and they got a lot of different weapons, size inside, shooting, etc. So I would take them, and then I mean, you saw them play early in the year. You beat them up at UConn. I'd have a
Mhm.
hard time picking against UConn now that they're completely healthy with Mullins and Terrace Reed back because what you want out of a team like that or Arizona or you want coaches who are not going to let their team take
Mhm.
anybody for granted. Bobby Hurley, if he's playing Bryant College, is trying to beat them by 70 because he feels like going into the game, they could beat us. And so, he's not going to take anybody for granted along the road to the Final Four. So that's an easy 4 right there. But I
I'm
would
with you.
that's
Those
the
are my
4.
4 as well. Yep.
But you
Yeah.
guys, so neither of you guys think Duke is in there.
No.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't think Duke has the depth this year they did last year. I love
Okay.
Boozer. I'm a
Yeah.
Boozer guy. I love him. I love Illinois. I think Illinois with this Keaton Wagler coming out of nowhere and some of the size they have, I think they're really good. I could see them getting to at least an Elite Eight.
Yeah.
Um, SEC, a lot, it's up for grabs. It's not as good a league as last year. There's a lot of those teams. That Florida backcourt is just not as good as the 3 pros that were in it
Mm-mm.
last year that won a national championship. Alabama doesn't have depth up front. Auburn is not as good. Vandy seems to be good enough. I'm going to do a Arkansas Kentucky game on Saturday, and what I'm
Oh,
going to
cool.
say is Arkansas's got a Sweet 16 offense and a round of 32 defense, and that's not good
Wow.
enough.
Yeah.
Wow.
My last question for you. You talked a little bit about Alabama's addition of a former NBA
Mhm.
player to its roster. You
Yeah,
politely disagreed a bit with former Arizona athletic director Greg Byrne over the issue.
yeah,
Do you
yep.
think we're headed for more of this in college basketball, or do you think the NCAA is finally going to draw a line in the sand at some point?
My answer is the same answer I've been giving people over the last 2 years about all of this stuff, NIL, transfer portal. And that is, Shane, I have no freaking idea of what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I don't know who's in charge making decisions at the NCAA.
no one does.
I'm not an NCAA basher. I know that this is absurd right now. Okay. And my solution, I tweeted this out. The NBA collective bargaining agreement is not up until 29/30. I honestly think, as good as DeBonsa and all these great freshmen have been for college basketball, I kind of think maybe we ought to twofold. Let the freshmen, let the high school guys go to the NBA if they're good enough. And remember, some of them are still going to college. Many of them, most of them, because of NIL, they're going to make a lot of money. But also, once you turn pro or a professional anywhere, that's it. That's it. No more. Can't come back. Okay. And even to the point where a kid like Korchenkov, now, I said if you're 18 or 19 and you're a European player, I could make an exception there. Okay. Maybe if you're 18 or 19, you go to the G League and you want to come back, fine, but not a 22-year-old G Leaguer or a 23-year-old that's at Virginia from Germany who's really been a pro for 4 years. Korchenkov, a little different because he's 19. And I'm not saying that because you guys it's your podcast, but I just think this is out of hand now. This is crazy. We got mass chaos.
Couldn't agree more. And something's got to be done. Can you be commissioner of college basketball? Would you want that role?
No, the reason I wouldn't, and nobody will take the job, is because you're not going to take it if you don't have the power to make these decisions. They can't even get this CBC thing through with football, whatever they call it, right? The committee that's going to watch over the cheating.
Oh yeah.
We can't get 68 football programs to agree because some football programs, including some of the Big 12, have like multi-billionaires pouring money in, and so they don't want to see that. So, no, I don't want the job. I'll voice my opinion on Twitter, occasionally on TV. I'm good.
And you know what, Fran? I told you before we had you on the show, before we got rolling, your passion shines through. And all of us fans who are watching the game at home very much appreciate it. We know you love the game. When you, in your intro in Provo, you could see how jacked up you were, just like all of us watching at home. And you call a great game. And we, as always, Shane and I really appreciate you coming on our show.
Thank you, Eric. I do have a joy for this game since I was 14 years old. There's never been a day in my whole life where I haven't done something with basketball. Right now, you can't see it, but I'm doing another chart here. I'm getting ready for, I already got Arkansas, Kentucky done. I've got Kansas, Texas Tech on Monday. As I said earlier, they'll never fire me for being unprepared. And I love what I do. And I love talking the game. I love promoting the kids' teams. And the greatest compliment I can have is I've been around this league for 23 years, and I don't care. Unless it's Dick Enberg and Billy Packer, those guys are before your time. I don't think anybody's.
We remember.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to do a better job covering the Big 12 than John and I, or Bob Wischusen and I, or the great Brent Musburger and I. And I love what I do. So I appreciate you guys, and I love coming on because I love talking Arizona basketball with you guys because there's so much to talk about.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Shane, I'm telling you, I thought that was one of the best interviews we have ever had on this program, and doing it for 5.5 years.
It like you talked about a bunch of times, Eric. The best interviews aren't really interviews per se. It starts as an interview, and it just turns into three guys just talking basketball. And Fran, like I said, he could be doing anything else with his time. He's a big shot at ESPN. He could tell us to pound sand, but he's been very generous with his time. He's never told us no. And we'd love to have him on again before the NCAA tournament. But love that guy. Does a great job calling Arizona basketball games and all basketball games. And that's the kind of conversation that could have gone on a couple more hours if we all had the time and bandwidth.
Yeah, the fact that Fran has a super busy schedule, and he's given us 30 minutes to sit down with a couple of guys to talk Arizona. I can't say it enough. His passion shines through. Yeah. He loved, and he said this, I love basketball. I love, just being a part of it and talking basketball. We hit on so many different things, from Bobby Hurley's antics to the NCAA and everything in between, and obviously Arizona and Tony Padilla and everything like that. So I really appreciated where Fran went there.
And I like that he mentioned Bill Walton because I mean, really, realistically, he sort of took the mantle from Bill Walton as far as calling Arizona games. He doesn't call all of them, but he calls a lot of them, and it's like Bill Walton did with Dave Pasch for a lot of years, and so he's kind of become the color commentator for Arizona basketball when it's on ESPN. So very cool that he's willing to join us.
Yeah, and I said to him, off air that Boog Shambi is, the Cubs announcer. I'm a Cubs fan, and
Yep.
so it's cool that they have a chance to do it together and they have good chemistry. So enjoy listening to those two, and thanks to Fran. As I said, one of my favorite interviews that we've ever done in nearly 300 episodes of Wildcat Country. Okay, let's get to picks. Last week we both hit our top 25 upset. I got 2 out of 3 Arizona games correct. You got 2 out of 3 Arizona games correct, including getting the Wildcats on the number on Monday night. That was very impressive. So good job with that. Give me an unranked Big 12 road win this weekend.
I'm going to go with TCU at Colorado. I think TCU just are they losing to Houston as we're recording?
Yeah,
this?
they're gonna probably come up short against
They're
Houston.
coming up short again. I'm just looking to look what the score is. Oh yeah,
Down
they're
9
down
with
11 with 3 minutes left. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Unless they, never mind. But yeah, it's not quite must-win territory yet for TCU, but it's the kind of game TCU needs to win just to stay in the tournament discussion at this point. They're on the outside looking in, probably first 4, next 4 out. So they just can't afford to lose a game like this. So I think they get it done. Boulder's always a tough place to play for the altitude or whatever you want to say, but I think they get the win.
I am going to go with Oklahoma State over Utah. Not a good season for the Utes.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State, not bad. Going to be in Tucson next week. So that is one I think they need to stack up as many wins. I don't think they're going to make the NCAA tournament, but nonetheless, take a shot there with that road victory. How about a top 25 upset, Shane? What do you got?
Yeah, I was gonna go with SMU over Louisville, but I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna be a little bolder, and I'm gonna take St. Mary's over Gonzaga.
Really? Okay.
The Zags have been living a little dangerously. They just avoided home upsets against was it Seattle and then San Francisco last week, but they just beat by 2. St. Mary's, who Arizona played in an exhibition game, they're a tournament team like they usually are. Possible 1-8 matchup for Arizona in the second round coming up in the West region at some point. So yeah, I think the Zags lose a close one at home. I think Gonzaga is the kind of team that just needs kind of a reset because they've been struggling a bit lately, and I think St. Mary's gives them the opportunity to reset.
I had a parlay last night. I needed UCF to beat ASU. They came back. They did it. And I hit the parlay. ASU was up 10 in the second half.
They're up 11 with 5 minutes left.
There you go. Yeah. And I think UCF keeps it going with a win over Texas Tech at home. The Texas Tech looked really good against Houston last week, and that team is a lot better than they were earlier in the year. Arizona's going to have their hands full with Texas Tech, but I think UCF gets them here. Now, game on Saturday in Tempe. Let's make our pick. I believe I will be there. It will be, I believe, my first Arizona game this year. I get to see number 1, as you have already done, at the San Diego State game here in Phoenix. So, Shane, I am going with the Wildcats to pull away late. This game is not going to be as close as the game the other day. ASU had a brutal travel schedule in that they had to go to Orlando and then come back and play Arizona. Meanwhile, the Wildcats, just had to go up to Provo. I mean, it's a much shorter trip and had actually, an extra day off there. Give me the Wildcats by 14 on Saturday.
Okay. Like you mentioned, their ASU's coming off a tough loss at UCF. They were outscored 18-4 in the last 5 minutes of that game, and gave away 11-point lead. If ASU hits threes at the clip they did in Tucson, that they went 11 of 25 in that game, they hit some ridiculous shots, then all bets are off. But Arizona's one of the best teams in the Big 12 at defending the three, that game notwithstanding. So I don't think that's going to happen again. I wouldn't be surprised if ASU got up early and maybe led for some of the first half. It's always a fun atmosphere with the U of A fans in attendance, but I think that just makes the ASU fans louder, so it makes for a fun environment. But Koa Pete and Tobe Awaka combined for 49 points in that first game against ASU, and I think the bigs are going to dominate again in this one and eventually just wear ASU down like we've seen U of A do many times this season. So I'm going to take U of A by 10 points in Tempe. I'm going to be a little more cautious. It's difficult for me to go further, a lot beyond that, just because of how close the game was in Tucson. It's going to be yet another game, I think, that we sweat out for 30, maybe 35 minutes. But I think Arizona finds a way to win, and ASU is the only team standing in the way of them, and they're a new school record of starting the year with 22 wins.
Get it done. This is going to be a lot of fun to see what happens. Can they keep it going? And it would be a bad one to lose to ASU. I'll tell you.
I'll just mention one more thing, or I'm going to ask you this. I don't know what it is now, but before the BYU game, Arizona was about 10-1 to finish the regular season undefeated. Assuming they're still close to that number, like, would you take those odds? Would you put like 10 or 20 bucks on Arizona, like at 10-1? No. Okay.
I would make the odds 50-1 for Arizona to win.
I think it's a bit
at Kansas.
Yeah. Well, this was before the BYU game, so they're probably even better now. So that kind of surprised me, considering the gauntlet they have to go through. But yeah, I thought I'd throw it out there.
If you had told me, so last year, or a few years ago, you remember on your birthday that Arizona started that win streak.
Football team
against the football team started that win streak.
Yep.
Last year on my birthday, Arizona beat Arizona State. And a few years before that, on my birthday, Arizona lost Brandon Ashley against Cal.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, it's on a Sunday this year. Arizona plays on a Saturday. Let's just hope if I could say Arizona is undefeated on February 1st, you could have given me 200-1, Shane, and I would have said no shot.
Yeah.
This ride is so much fun. This team. We haven't talked about an Arizona loss on a podcast since last March. That's wild. Yeah. So, you know what? If we can make it to February that way, we already have. We have already made it to February. So,
unfortunately, Charles Barkley's already talking about Arizona winning the national championship, which he does every year. And now he's already talking about it again. So I feel like that's the kiss of death right there.
No, it's not. No.
But I mean, they're the best team in the country. There's no two ways around it right now.
Thanks to Fran Fraschilla. That was absolutely awesome to chat with him. As I said, one of my favorite interviews we've ever done on this show. So for Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.